Yes, Halo 4, the forgotten game in the series. This game seems to be in a category of its own. It's not immensely loved like the original trilogy is, but it's also not infamously hated by half the community like the game that followed it, Halo 5. As for what I think about it, well, I think this game is good. Not great, but good. But this isn't a review of Halo 4, although I might get around to that at some point. This is a weapon tier list for Halo 4. This game doesn't have the strongest weapon sandbox in the series, but it's got enough options to make this video worth doing. It's got some extremely versatile weapons, some incredibly mediocre ones, and one that is absolutely fucking terrible. Which weapon is that? Keep watching to find out. Before we jump in though, let's clarify a few things. First, this video is about the campaign, not the multiplayer. Second, I only consider weapons the Master Chief can use in first person. That means I'm not going to be including weapons such as turrets. Third, I played the game on normal with several skulls on. I wanted to make enemies a bit tougher so it would be easier to tell which weapons are actually good versus which ones are just okay. Lastly, this list isn't going to cover every weapon in the game. Originally, I was going to do a best and worst format for this video, but I decided to scrap that and do a tier list instead. Because of that, there are some weapons I don't have much footage for, if any, and this video is taken long enough as it is, so I'm just rolling with the weapons I originally planned on including. Sorry if that disappoints anyone. With that out of the way, let's get to the list. We're starting this one off with a classic, the Assault Rifle. On any given playthrough, you're going to be using this thing a lot. It's meant to be an always reliable killing machine that doesn't excel at any one thing. But is it actually that? Well, kinda. It's pretty accurate when firing at both short and medium range, even at its maximum possible bullet spread. It also has a generously large clip size, meaning you won't have to reload a ton while using it. However, its damage per shot is not the best. As you can see here, it was taking me quite a while to clean up these grunts, even though I wasn't missing many shots. You can't really overpower enemies with the assault rifle, at least not easily. It's definitely one of the better weapons for taking out elites though, since it grinds down their shields a bit quicker than you would expect it to. It's got a high floor but a low ceiling. There are other weapons that are more effective without requiring as much skill from the player. The assault rifle is a low B tier weapon. It's not unreliable by any stretch, but there are definitely cases in which it's not a super ideal weapon to have. Next, the Magnum. The Halo series is rather well known for the effectiveness of its instant kill headshot weapons, and the Magnum is a pretty big reason as to why. It gives you a consistent and reliable option for quickly taking out enemies at pretty much any range that's not insanely far. It has a much smaller clip size than the assault rifle, but also a much faster reload speed, so it kinda balances out in that regard. Besides headshots though, it doesn't have a ton of utility. Not every enemy in this game can be killed with a single headshot, so the Magnum is not going to be your best friend in a confrontation with an elite, and especially not a Promethean Knight. Sure, you could use a plasma pistol to soften them up first, but at that point the Magnum isn't really doing the work, is it? The Magnum is hovering somewhere between B tier and C tier for me, but I think I'm going to put it in high C tier. This weapon is great at one-shot headshotting weak enemies, but garbage against tougher ones. There are other weapons that are just as good for headshots, but have much more utility outside of that. And speaking of those weapons, on to the Battle Rifle. Definitely one of the best weapons in the game. It has all the headshot capabilities the Magnum has with the same amount of accuracy if not more. However, it has more range and a larger clip size, so it's a much more viable option against tougher enemies that can't be one-shotted. You also don't get an accuracy penalty when aiming without scoping in, unlike another weapon in the game I'll get to later. The Battle Rifle is never really a bad weapon to have, and there's no situation in which using it leaves you at a massive disadvantage. The Battle Rifle is an A tier weapon. Now for the shotgun. This is a trickier one. You're clearly meant to be using this weapon primarily at close range, so I won't knock it too much for having bad accuracy outside of close range. However, I will knock it for not being able to kill grunts in one shot consistently. Even with skulls on, that seems just a bit ridiculous. Most elites require 3 shots to kill from full health, and that's not ideal for a weapon that shoots slowly and has an incredibly long reload time. Seriously, it takes forever to reload this thing. If you're gonna get quick and fast kills with a shotgun, you have to be extremely close to just about every enemy, leaving you really vulnerable to counterattacks from multiple directions. I'll use the shotgun if it's there and there's no obviously better choice laying around, but I certainly don't go out of my way to use it. The shotgun is a surefire C tier weapon, unbelievably mediocre. With that, we move on to the Covenant weapons, starting with the Storm Rifle. It shares a lot of qualities with the Assault Rifle. It's fairly consistent at both short and medium ranges, but it has the added benefit of not needing to be reloaded. It can overheat, but unless you're shooting for a ridiculously long period of time without stopping, you won't have to worry about that much. Like the Assault Rifle, the Storm Rifle is also not the best for cleaning up weaker enemies like Grunts and Jackals. I wouldn't say it's as bad as the Assault Rifle in this regard, but it's still not good. It does take out elite shields quickly, although it doesn't do a fucking thing against Promethean Knights. To be fair though, most weapons don't. The Storm Rifle isn't a gotta have it type of weapon, but its damage per shot is good enough to keep it viable in most situations, and its bad accuracy at max spread can be managed if you avoid constantly spraying and praying. But now for the golden question. Is it better than the Assault Rifle? No. Is it worse than the Assault Rifle? No. I'd say it's about the same quality weapon. In some ways it's better and in some ways it's worse, but I think it all evens out. The Storm Rifle is also a low B tier weapon. On to the Covenant Carbine. I won't talk about this one for too long since it's very similar to the Battle Rifle and I don't want to be redundant. The most important thing I can say about it is it's basically a slower handling version of the Battle Rifle. It reloads a beat slower and the scope doesn't seem to have as much zoom, making the Carbine less dominant at really long ranges. Despite these shortcomings, it's still a solid headshot capable weapon that's never really a bad option. The Covenant Carbine gets a B tier ranking. Ah yes, the Needler. This one has just about everything you want out of an effective first-person shooter weapon. To start, the tracking capabilities of the needles are insanely good in this game, almost to the point of feeling broken. You don't need that many needles for a super detonation, so you can wipe out even the toughest of enemies really quickly. Since I was playing with skulls, elites and knights usually survived a single needler detonation. That doesn't really hurt you though, since you can easily keep firing to get a second detonation that will finish them off quick, or just melee them for the coup de grace. The Needler also has a very high rate of fire with a pretty short reload time, so you won't have to wait too long to pump even more needles downstream. The Needler doesn't just make you feel equipped, it makes you feel dominant. It is no doubt an A tier weapon. And now we get to the Forerunner weapons. These ones were a bit harder to pin down than their UNSC or Covenant counterparts. Let's start with the Boltshot. At the core, it's just a worse version of the Magnum. It has one-shot headshot capabilities, but you can't scope in while using it, so hitting headshots consistently is really unreliable outside of close range. And headshots are the only way you're gonna kill anything with a Boltshot, since the per-shot damage is fucking pitiful. The devs tried to balance this out by giving the Boltshot a charge mechanic similar to the plasma pistol, but that doesn't really help since larger enemies take 3 charge shots to go down, 2 if you're lucky, and you're almost certainly going to have to reload during that process because a charge blast takes 5 rounds to use and you only have 10 rounds in a clip. The Boltshot was supposed to be a unique alternative to the Magnum, but it's just an objectively worse weapon. There's nothing it does better than the Magnum. The Boltshot is a D tier weapon. Getting headshots at close range doesn't count for much when that's all your weapon can do. And now we get to the best weapon in the game, the Suppressor. Whoa. Did I say best weapon? Let me try that again. Okay, here we go, take 2. The Suppressor is awful, and I really mean awful. The number of things this weapon is awful at could fill a book. First, the accuracy is total garbage. You are going to miss just about everything you're shooting at if you're not firing from point blank range. Shooting moving targets while also moving yourself is a fucking crapshoot. But you might say that's to be expected because the devs wanted players to use the suppressor as an up-close spray and pray weapon. But here's the problem with that. The damage per shot is horrendous. Get ready to spend 2 or even 3 clips just to take out one elite or one knight. The time to kill is so unbelievably slow that you'll just get swarmed by other enemies while you're slowly grinding down your target. Even if you are hitting every shot, the suppressor is just not viable in any situation that isn't a 1v1 encounter. You can't even use it as a burst weapon in the way you might use the storm rifle, for example. The suppressor takes about 8 shots to reach minimum accuracy, which is basically instant given how fast the weapon fires. On top of that, using a controlled burst strategy just makes the time to kill problem even worse because, as I said earlier, the damage per shot is fucking terrible, so you're just going to mitigate one problem at the cost of amplifying another. The suppressor is an F tier weapon, and it is easily the worst weapon in the game. Unlike some other weapons in the game I'm not terribly fond of, I don't have a single positive thing to say about the suppressor. It is a terrible weapon in every possible way. F tier. Well, now that we got that shit show over with, let's move on to the light rifle. It's a nice long-range weapon, but not as good as, say, the battle rifle or even the Covenant Carbine. The primary reason for this is you only get perfect accuracy when scoped in. When not scoped in, you actually fire a few smaller shots that spread out a little bit as they travel. It's by no means a huge accuracy reduction, but it will lead to situations where it seems like you should be getting a headshot, but you're not, since the spread causes you to just barely miss. This also means it's not quite as good for running and gunning. Aside from that, the light rifle has pretty average clip size and pretty average reload speed. It's not bad, it just doesn't really excel at anything. I put it as a C tier weapon. And last, but not nearly as bad as I was expecting it to be before playing the game for this video, the Scattershot. This thing is sneaky good. It's essentially a much improved version of the shotgun. It does roughly the same amount of damage per shot, but you can shoot it way faster and reload it quicker. It only has 5 shots when fully loaded, which isn't great, but that's good for 2 solid kills on tougher enemies if you don't miss any shots. It also has better range than the shotgun, meaning you won't have to get within point blank range to get your accuracy above 1%. When I used the Scattershot, I felt like I could actually attack enemies because the time to kill is competitive, unlike the shotgun which forced me to play with a lot more caution. Overall, the Scattershot is pretty damn fun to use. It's not as good as the battle rifle or the needler due to not being competitive with those weapons at longer ranges, but it's still really good. It's a high B tier weapon. And there you have it, guys. There's the list. I decided not to use the super generic tier list creator that pops up in every video and just give you guys a summary of each weapon. If you've played Halo 4, there's a good chance you passionately disagree with at least one of the rankings on here. Feel free to let me know about it in the comments if that's the case. As always, thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one. Oh, but before you leave, feel free to watch this mini montage of me getting my ass kicked while attempting to play the game for this video. Enjoy.
The Covenant! They've already taken over the landing range.
Send me your coordinates.
I'm good at video games.